In terms of the influence on Genshin Impact's world-building, almost no character in the story can compare to the king of the ancient dragons, Nibelung, who reigned as monarch over the Light Realm back in an era when authorities over the elements belonged to his sovereigns and not Celestia's archons. It was during that era that the proud king of dragons raised 3 moons from the earth to govern the cycles of fate in his stead. These sisters were named Aralos, Solnari, and Canon, the eternal, iridescent, and frost moons. I suspect that Canon is the Frost Moon, largely owing to her name's preservation across different renditions of the Moon Sisters' tale. After all, the Frost Moon is the only one to have never died at any point, allowing for her legacy to be perpetuated through the worship of her faithful, amongst whom are the Frost Moon Scions, descendants of ancient Hyperborea's inhabitants who wove her light as threads from which they made the Fae in the furnaces of the deep galleries, as per the secrets of creation passed down to them by the first angel. As for the eternal and iridescent moons, they were not as lucky, for Aralos and Solnari would perish during their father's great war of vengeance on the heavenly river from beyond the sky. Slowly, their names faded from history, coming to be known only in myths and legends as Arya and Sonnet, a testament to how forgotten the Moon Sisters have become. In fact, so forgotten is their truth that for the longest time we all thought that the Moon Sisters were 3, when in reality it appears they were supposed to be 4. This child that failed to be born fell into the sea, becoming the islands known today as Nod-Krai, where the events surrounding her are shaping up to be pivotal plot points in the Song of the Welkin Moon chapter of Tevat. As of version 5.8, the exact purpose behind the Heavenly Moons' creation remains unclear. Some speculate that Nibelung made them to govern his world temporarily during a time when he departed elsewhere. Alternatively, I think Nibelung made them to assist him in ruling the world rather than to outright substitute for him, while he focused his efforts on other affairs. Regardless, the difference between the two possibilities is primarily a matter of execution, and it isn't too important for what we care about right now. The main takeaway is that the Dragon King Nibelung raised 3 moons from the earth to preside over the cycles of fate in the sky, hence why they are also called the Heavenly or Welkin Moons, for Nibelung was the Heavenly Father. Now, although the exact method of their birth is yet to be revealed, it's fair to consider the Moon Sisters as effectively Nibelung's daughters, possibly containing part of his divine essence, with which they can claim authority to fulfill their father's duties. The lunar remnants that failed in being born into a heavenly moon eventually gave rise to the prophesized new moon, the avatar of which is the third of the Fatui Harbingers, Columbina. Yep, this is the new moon goddess. She is very small, and if you poke her, she sends off a flower, which is kind of adorable. Here, look. Anyway, take a closer look at this depiction of the new moon goddess. You will notice that she resembles a flower pot when rotated upside down, which I find quite peculiar in light of Columbina's apparent association with flowers, combined with Mr. Nine's book, Flowers for Princess Fischl. Just to be clear, I don't actually think that Columbina is the real Princess Fischl, as I am currently unsure whether she fits all the necessary criteria to be her or not. However, the two characters still have a few very legitimate parallels between them that are worth highlighting. For instance, Columbina's father should be the Dragon King Nibelung, since he was the creator of the other moons who successfully completed their birth. In his stories, Mr. Nine explicitly makes out Fischl's father to be a really big deal, where in Flowers for Princess Fischl he is described as being no mere shade, but rather the great and mighty ruler of the Immunachtraich, the kingdom of eternal night. While in Legend of the Shattered Halberd, Fischl is the daughter of the God King, the Celestial Emperor. Mr. Nine's Legend of the Shattered Halberd is clearly inspired by Chinese folklore, since it utilizes several East Asian and especially Chinese narrative tropes, with the Celestial Emperor himself being an obvious reference to the Jade Emperor from Chinese mythology. But when it comes to that, it's a bit hard to pinpoint the identity of this Celestial Emperor. The way I see it, he could be the founder of Kandria, the star-eyed man whom the Voyager inhabited, hence the Immunachtraich. Or he could be the Usurper King, the primordial one who created the Four Shades. Or he could be Nibelung, the original king of the world, in which case the real Princess Fischl would be one of his daughters. Potentially even Columbina, though I think that's unlikely. On the topic of princesses, the role that Columbina plays as the Moon Maiden reminds me a lot of Princess Kaguya from The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, one of the most iconic stories in Japanese folklore. But before I tell you about Kaguya Hime, if you also admire classical Japanese culture and traditions, then I am sure you will love these amazing Japanese snacks from Sakurako and Tokyo Treat, who are the sponsors of this video. Sakurako and Tokyo Treat are excellent suppliers of authentic and traditional Japanese sweets, snacks, pastries, and tea, since they aim to deliver you a taste of Japan's seasons from the comfort of your home. First, we have Sakurako, a monthly artisan box themed around Japan's seasons and breathtaking geography. They partner with local snack makers from across the nation to provide you with their best traditional treats. Every box comes with a keepsake in the form of home goods and tableware. For example, I received a cool ceramic piece from the Artisans of Bloom, inspired by the sea breeze that is so characteristic of Japan's beautiful summer landscapes. Oh, and Sakurako always include new monthly samples from local Japanese tea houses with artisanal blends from across Japan's prefectures that bring out rich aromas and a smooth taste of tradition. Of course, the box is also packed with high-quality snacks that match the monthly theme, from crispy crackers and rich cookies to smooth chocolates, fruity jellies, pastries, and all kinds of snacks traditional to Japan's various cities and prefectures, with information about all of these snacks, such as potential allergies and the local artisans who made them, being listed in Sakurako's monthly booklets, along with a bunch of interesting facts about Japanese history and culture. Now, if you are looking for something a little more fun and casual, then you will love Tokyo Treat. Every month, they deliver a variety of exclusive time-limited snacks straight from Japan during their production period. Expect new flavors of limited Kit Kats like these chocolate orange ones, combined with a wide variety of mouth-watering popular sweets and foods, offering something delicious for every craving and always catered towards the current Japanese celebration and month theme. And as with Sakurako, Tokyo Treat include their own monthly booklet with each new box, detailing all necessary information for the snacks inside, along with a bunch of fun facts about Japanese pop culture and celebrations. If you are looking for a seasonal taste of Japan or even a nice gift, then Sakurako and Tokyo Treat are both amazing options, offering brand new themes and snacks every single month. So, I highly recommend checking them out through the links in the description and using code MYNAME4NOW on the screen right now for $5 off on your first Tokyo Treat or Sakurako orders. Huge thanks to Sakurako and Tokyo Treat for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the Princess of the Moon. The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, also known as The Tale of Princess Kaguya, is one of my favorite monogataris from childhood, and while I currently don't have much to connect it with Columbina beyond vibes, I still think it's worth considering as a potential source of inspiration. Now, before I tell you Princess Kaguya's story, one detail that I need you guys to keep in mind is the fact that Columbina is presented in the Song of the Welkin Moon as a highly sought-after character, which is clearly supposed to symbolize the countless individuals who are going to go bankrupt the moment her banner releases. Of the ones I know for certain, we've got the Fatui under Zandiq's orders, who are searching for Columbina after her apparent defection. Mondstadt's strongest warrior, Grandmaster Varka, claims to be in Nod-Krai in pursuit of the moon, an endeavor that almost certainly ties into the Moon Maiden. Then we have the Frost Moon Scions, who revere Columbina as the new moon goddess, erecting statues and idols in her honor. I imagine the Voynich Guild and the Lightkeepers also want Columbina for reasons I will get into later. And of course, there is the Traveler and their companions, likely Inefa, Aino, Durin, and perhaps even Jehoda, who will no doubt be looking for her as well. There is also a sixth faction that I believe will be seeking out Columbina, and that is the Wild Hunt. Though their reasons may be more sinister, because depending on who their leader is, they have two very good reasons to capture the new moon goddess, and I assure you those two reasons are not what you are thinking about. In the tale of Princess Kaguya, an old bamboo cutter named Okina comes across a shining stalk of bamboo. Curious, he cuts it open only to find an infant the size of his thumb inside. Okina and his wife were old and had no children of their own, so they decided to raise the little girl as their daughter, naming her Nayotake no Kaguya Hime, meaning Shining Princess of the Young Bamboo. From then onwards, whenever Okina cut open a stalk of bamboo, he would find a golden nugget inside. Soon, his family grew rich, and within the span of just 3 months, Kaguya grew from an infant to a young woman, with extraordinary grace and beauty unmatched throughout the land. Here, it's worth noting that Kaguya was not born on Earth. Rather, she is originally a celestial from the Moon Kingdom who was exiled to Earth as punishment, which is when Okina finds her inside the bamboo shoot. Therefore, if it is indeed the case that Princess Kaguya inspires Columbina, then just like her counterpart, Columbina's birthplace should be in the lunar palace on one of Tevat's moons rather than Nod-Krai, likely the frost moon as a conservative estimate. Following that line of logic, Columbina was cast down from her moon to be reborn in Nod-Krai, either in exile, expulsion, or perhaps she descended through her own volition and was later found by Piero and the Tsaritsa as per the Commedia dell'arte. Naturally, Okina and his wife initially tried to hide Kaguya from outsiders, lest they bring them unwanted attention. But you know how word of mouth is, so eventually news of her beauty would spread far and wide, attracting many suitors who sought her hand in marriage. Of those suitors, 6 noblemen stood out, one of whom was the Emperor of Japan, while the others consisted of 2 princes, a minister, a grand counselor, and a middle counselor. For the first 5, Kaguya gave them 5 impossible tasks each, agreeing to marry the noble who can bring her the item specified for him. The stone-begging bowl of the Buddha, a jeweled branch from the mythical island of Horai, a robe of fire rats' skins, a colored jewel from a dragon's neck, and a cowrie shell born from a swallow. Obviously, the 5 nobles failed at acquiring any of those items. As for the Emperor, Kaguya politely declined his advances, citing that as a foreigner she was not permitted to enter his castle. As time passes, Kaguya's adoptive parents begin to notice her reminiscing at the sight of the moon, shedding tears as she gazes upon it every night. The couple became increasingly worried until Kaguya reveals to them that she is originally from the moon and that she was only cast down temporarily as punishment. Punishment for what, you ask? Great question, my astute viewer. Now, if only I could go back to the Heian period to ask the same thing to the author, because he or she never elaborate on it. Nonetheless, the day of Kaguya's eventual return grew closer, and the elderly couple were overcome with grief at the realization that they were not only about to lose their newfound daughter, but, as it turns out, the golden nuggets Okina found inside the bamboo shoots were intended as payments by the Celestials for Kaguya's upkeeping. So, they were also about to lose the source of their wealth. Upon hearing this news, the Emperor sends his army to protect Kaguya from the Celestials who had come to retrieve her. And though she was saddened to leave her many friends behind, Kaguya instructs one of the officers to deliver her letter along with an elixir of immortality to the Emperor. Letting go of her worldly attachments, she then ascends with the heavenly embassy back to the moon. Okina and his wife become bedsick from sorrow, while the Emperor orders his officers to throw away the elixir of immortality, as he no longer wished to live forever if he could not see Kaguya. After reading Kaguya's letter, he writes a final one of his own, and orders it to be burned at the mountain nearest to heaven. That was Mount Fuji, and this was how it got its name, Fushi, meaning immortality. If you have been picking up what I was laying down so far, it should be clear that the 5 noblemen and the emperor who sought Kaguya's hand in marriage may correspond to the Nod-Krai factions I outlined earlier, who are pursuing the Moon Maiden for the sake of their own ambitions. According to the Song of the Welkin Moon web event, the Wild Hunt are currently looking for something of extreme significance in Nod-Krai. And look, that special thing to the Abyss does not necessarily have to be the Moon Maiden. Perhaps the Wild Hunt are looking for something more abyssal, like for example the Conrian sinner Rerir, and it makes sense for the Wild Hunt to be looking for him given that he is the Moon Hunter. But Rerir isn't just hunting any moon, he is specifically going after Solnari, which might sound odd at first, given that she should have been dead long before he was even born. But don't worry, I will get to that. It could be the case that Rerir is currently confined somewhere in Nod-Krai, much like how Vederfolnir was chained inside a crystal beneath the border of Liyue and Sumeru. Thus, the Wild Hunt is drawn to his power, seeking to free him so that he can become their leader. However, let's assume Rerir is completely free, and isn't what the Wild Hunt is searching for. What would they be hunting then? Well, in this case, I would default to Columbina, for as the prophesied goddess of the new moon, it's unsurprising for her to be the primary target of the Wild Hunt. You see, moonlight has been established in Genshin to possess mysterious divine properties that are congruent with life, which is actually on par for the course when you look at the bigger picture. After all, Aralos, Solnari, and Kanon were created by Nibelung, the king of the ancient dragons, and of the 7 sovereigns whom we have seen so far, Apep, Nouvellette, and Chiquotle, all 3 of them possess powers that are highly congruent with the survival and propagation of life. I will state this in the most straightforward way possible in order to avoid confusion. Onto that, the mere existence of the 7 dragon sovereigns is biologically good. Their very life is directly and significantly beneficial for the evolutionary success and flourishing of the ecosystems around them. This is demonstrated twice in-game. First on a limited scale with Apep and her babies, then on a much grander scale with Nouvellette, who personally facilitated the survival of an entire nation by transfigurating the primordial sea water in their veins into true human blood, thereby extending their opportunity to reproduce and preventing them from becoming evolutionary failures in the form of genetic dead ends that failed to pass on their lineage into the next generation of organisms within their species. I am using this hyper-precise evolutionary terminology to showcase how the ancient dragons, especially the strongest amongst them, such as the sovereigns and the moons, are deities of evolution, abundance, and permanence, directly aligned with life itself. In fact, tying in the heavenly moons to the ancient dragon's dominion over life and evolution is even easier than you think. By taking a quick detour into the subterranean ruins of Tsurumi, we can find this particular mural left behind by the island's ancient inhabitants, long before the Thunderbird civilization. It reads, "You are called the powerful Trivia, and you are called the moon by your borrowed light," with the specific Latin word for moon being Luna, which is the current terminology used in reference to the heavenly moons in Nod-Krai. As for trivia, this is the Roman epithet of Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, crossroads, and the moon. One of Hecate's most well-known features is her depiction as a triple-faced goddess, much like Xipe, the Aeon of Harmony, and this imagery is congruent with the iconic syzygy of the heavenly moons, who are called powerful by their borrowed light. On Earth, the moon is a sort of mirror that reflects the sun's light. So, on Tevat, the heavenly moon's borrowed light would be a reflection of the authority bestowed upon them by their father, the Dragon King Nibelung, who, according to the Voyager, shone brighter than all civilizations she had ever seen. In the past, I often talked about Nibelung as a god who ruled over light in its totality, the so-called omni-element symbolized by the Triquetra. Hence why I likened him to the metaphorical sun of the world, the source of all light and life. Now, in Tsurumi's mural, you will notice that the moons are shown eclipsing a sun behind them, which in context has to be symbolic of them governing the world with Nibelung's primordial light, somewhat reminiscent of how Boer claims to be the moon in place of the long-gone sun. And the ring they form in the sky would be the ring of Nibelung, the object I suspect Rerir, the moon hunter, is currently after. For in Norse mythology, Rerir is the ancestor of the legendary Volsung lineage, the same bloodline that Siegfried, the hero of Wilhelm Richard Wagner's opera The Ring of the Nibelung, descends from. So, the light of Aralos, Solnari, Canon, and even Columbina is a reflection of the Heavenly Father, Nibelung. Thus, it makes sense that the ancestors of the Frost Moon Scions utilized the Frost Moon's light to forge the earliest alchemical life forms during the era of the Golden City. Today, however, the Frost Moon Scions who migrated to Nod-Krai leverage the moonlight for a different purpose, to repel the Abyss. In fact, the fire used by the Light Keepers to combat the Wild Hunt is derived from moonlight. From this perspective, moonlight's properties are similar to the Khvarena energy created by the angel Nabu Malikata to suppress the Abyss. René de Petrichor notes that Khvarena energy is itself alive and functions more like the Abyss than elemental energy, but the two are polar opposites that annihilate each other when they come in contact. Thus, if moonlight and the Khvarena are both life forces that can ward off the Void Realm's abyssal currents, then it should be the case that the Abyss is an antithetical opposite of light and life. However, be very careful. This isn't to say that the Void Realm operates on the principle of death. For death is but a natural stage of life, and the Abyss is anything but natural. Rather, the Abyss should be seen as a sentience absent living, a profane form of sentience that is incongruent with conventional life as we understand it, akin to how Elinas describes his existence in the Void Realm before Rhine-Daughter found him, then gave him a body and a name. Furthermore, Mavuika told the Traveler that the secret source mechanisms designed by the ancient dragons to reweave pre-existing phlogiston currents and ley lines originate from the moons, and Mavuika learned this detail based on her investigation into the Fatui's intelligence, particularly the current project undertaken by their second harbinger Zandiq, whom we have heard reading the Pale Star Edict to retrieve the Damsellette, Columbina, at all costs. Now, if the miniature trees inside the condensed versions of the crescent-shaped resin that we feed into the ley lines are supposed to be a hint that the heavenly moons can control Tevat's ley line trees and dictate their functions based on the starry constellations of the firmament, which is a hypothesis that I have postulated many times on this channel in the past, then the Wild Hunt are going to have to prevent Columbina's ascension no matter what. Otherwise, if the new moon is permitted to ascend and complete its birth, it would become a major hurdle in the Abyss's ability to spread across the Vat. Not only because its power fundamentally annihilates abyssal energy, but also because the new moon could potentially safeguard the ley lines from any future infiltration. Finally, there is one last detail to add regarding Rerir and his potential involvement with Columbina. Based on his Chinese and English titles, we have always known that Rerir was the Moon Hunter, and that he was also going after someone called Solnari. However, we never got any clarification on who this Solnari was besides possibly being related to the Heavenly Moons, leading me to speculate a long time ago that Solnari is the Crimson Moon of ancient Khaenri'ah, the deity that preceded the Black Sun of the eclipse. As it turns out, I was somewhat correct, but with an important caveat. Back then, we did not know that the new moon was even a thing, and I assumed that the Crimson Moon was an independent entity from the three heavenly moons, but she is not. Thanks to the letter Alice receives from what I assume is Inazuma, we now know that the heavenly moons, Arya, Sonnet, and Kanon, are also known as Aralos, Solnari, and Kanon, with these likely being the original names Nibelung gave them. Following this pattern, we can try to assign each of them their corresponding titles based on the naming order, where Aralos is the Eternal Moon, Solnari is the Iridescent Moon, and Kanon is the Frost Moon, as I mentioned at the start of this video. This categorization fits really well with Solnari because it is said that when the iridescent moon shattered, its crimson shadow sank into the abyssal sea, hence the crimson moon worshipped in ancient Khaenri'ah. As a matter of fact, since Solnari had a shadow which became Khaenri'ah's Crimson Moon, nothing stops Aralos and Kanon from having shadows of their own. And that's the principle upon which the Raiden twins, Baal and Beelzebul, appear to operate. You see, I don't think that Makoto and A are Aralos or her reincarnation. Rather, they are much more likely to be angelic elemental beings born from the Eternal Moon's remnants after it was destroyed. The god of eternal transience, Makoto, represents the side of Aralos that the people of the first civilization would have seen in their day-to-day lives, the eternal moon that hung above them in the sky, while the god of eternal stillness, A, represents Aralos's crimson shadow, like how A was Makoto's shadow, and why she had a crimson moon inside her domain. This also aligns with how Makoto was much more sympathetic and caring towards humanity at first, making her the better fit for an Archon, while A remained aloof from them for thousands of years, until only recently when she decided to discard the shackles of her past, since presiding over humans was never meant to be her role. Now, when it comes to Columbina, despite being the potential avatar of the new moon, it's important to remember that the new moon itself does not exist yet, since it either failed to be born or was not intended to be born originally, and she herself has yet to ascend into that role. Thus, Columbina's current existence is almost definitely connected to the Frost Moon. All the hints and clues lead to a direct relationship with Kanon. However, it would be really cool if Columbina is a product or reincarnation of Solnari, specifically the iridescent moon that was destroyed during Nibelung's Great War of Vengeance before its crimson shadow, the deity worshipped by Khaenri'ah's Crimson Moon dynasty, sank into the abyssal sea. By the way, this might explain why the field of flowers turns crimson beneath Columbina's feet. It could be symbolic of the moon's crimson shadow, the one Rerir is likely after. And I guess the flowers could also be referencing flowers for Princess Fischl, because Mr. 9 writes that Fischl's mother faded from memory, just like how Solnari has also faded from history. I still don't think that Columbina is the real Princess Fischl, but it's a possibility that crossed my mind. More importantly though, this gives Rerir an extremely legitimate reason to be involved in the Song of the Welkin Moon. After all, he is the Moon Hunter, the Rasher of Solnari. So, if Columbina is of Solnari and the vessel of the prophesied new moon, then that makes her the ultimate target for the sharp end of his spear. Well, look what we have here. Someone who has made it to the end of this video. Since you made it thus far, chances are you are either alt-tabbed and listening to my
deep, sexy voice in the background,
or are interested in learning more about Rerir, in which case I recommend this older video right here, where I go over his origins in Norse mythology, along with some potential major parallels to the character of Kiana Kaslana from Hoyoverse's first ever game, Fly Me to the Moon. Oh, and I also talk about Mamoru Oshii's Angel's Egg there, which is very relevant to Columbina, mind you. I just didn't bring it up this time to avoid relying on the exact same linchpin every single video. But alas, we will revisit those ideas in the future. I also want to once again thank Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video. They are both amazing curators of high-quality Japanese snacks, and it's always a pleasure to work with them. So feel free to check them out in the description and use code MyNameForNow to support the channel while you're at it. As always, a huge thanks to everyone who already supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you for watching till the end. For now, I've been My Name For Now, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.